Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. Hey there, it's Scott Groves coming to you on a special additional episode of Scott's Thoughts. There's so much going on in the headlines, we decided to drop another podcast. Not smoking a cigar right now because we're trying to squeeze this in before I go to the gym tonight. But there's a lot of interesting current events, some of which relate back to what we talked about last week or these last couple days as they've been being released on YouTube. So we thought we'd do a quick follow-up. One of the things that I talked about on the last episode of Scott's Thoughts is Disney, right? Disney kind of moving the goalpost on movie theaters, changing how they're doing things thanks to Disney Plus. And in a rare kind of show of unity, the National Association of Theater Owners writing a letter to Disney saying that, like, hey, you guys screwed up. You're costing us money. You cost you money. You could have released Black Widow in the movie theaters exclusively for a couple weeks, then released it on Disney Plus, because for a well-reviewed movie, and I looked this up right before we started, Black Widow has actually a really good rating on Rotten Tomatoes and all the other sites. For a well-reviewed movie, Black Widow had a 41% drop-off from Saturday to Sunday on people that went to go see it in the theater. Now, we can blame that on COVID. We can blame that on a lot of things. But considering that Disney Plus took in almost $60 million for people who opted to stay at home and watch Black Widow, and you figure there's 2, 3, 4, 5 people per household watching that movie, adjust for people that are a little COVID hesitant to go out in public, there's probably somewhere between $60 and $120 million that was left on the table for the movie theater owners that went to Disney Plus. And the movie theater owners are pissed about it. And sure enough, the fall off from day one to day two and weekend one to weekend number two was unprecedented for a well-reviewed movie, especially a Avengers, Marvel themed movie. And the theaters are pissed, right? And we talked about this in the last episode. We'll actually link to it below that, the business is changing. Disney has every right in the world to test out new business models, but are they cutting off their nose to spite their face because they want to really go all in on Disney Plus and this kind of like multi-channel day one release, Disney Plus, plus theaters, plus whatever. Well, now a new unforeseen problem has come about, and it actually affected Scarlett Johansson, who is Black Widow, in the release of Black Widow, and apparently it's affecting The Rock in the movie The Jungle Book. Uncertain if he's going to sue, but absolutely Scarlett Johansson, aka Black Widow, is suing Disney because her contract was set up where she got a much lower upfront base for acting in the movie Black Widow, but she got huge backside residuals based on the performance in the movie theater. Now, if you remember, famously, Robert Downey Jr. did this with the 2 Avengers Endgame and Infinity War movies, where he took a smaller base up front, and by smaller I mean, whatever he made, 20 million instead of 40 million, but then he took points on the back end, and this is pretty common when you become a pretty big actor in Hollywood. You'll take points on the back end. So if you think about a movie production of all the money it makes, there's 100 points, and if you're the director, you might get 1 point. If you're the producer, you'll get 3 points. If you're this person, you'll maybe get a quarter of a point or a fraction or a point. This is actually how a lot of small time budget, like under $5 million movies are made, where a bunch of investors will get together and they'll say, okay, there's $5 million to make this movie. The person who wrote the script is bringing it to market, is maybe acting in it, producing it. They'll get 10 points. Now, if you're an investor, 5 million divided by 90, each point is assigned a dollar value. And then you get, future residuals based on the number of points that you own and how you invested in the movie up front. Well, big releases like Endgame are no different, right? So Robert Downey Jr. took points on the movie and said, okay, pay me a little bit less up front, but if this movie really knocks it out of the park and exceeds that, $200 million production budget, I want a percentage of the additional income once we go over the cost of the production budget. I think that movie made like $2 billion, or maybe you can look this up, Chris. You can look up what Endgame and Infinity Wars made in total revenue. I think worldwide revenue for Infinity Wars and Endgame was something like over $2 billion between the two of them. So he got a percentage of that. So for these actors who take points on the backside, it's really important to have a strong showing at the theater. And apparently, Chris, go for it. What'd they make?
Endgame made $2.79 billion. And what was the other one?
The other one was Infinity War. So the two movies combined made closer to like probably 4 or 5 billion. Jesus. That's
Infinity
insane.
War was 2.04 billion.
Okay, so they made 4.7 billion, and Robert Downey Jr. took points or residuals on the back end. Basically, they take out the production value, they take out this, they do some weird Hollywood accounting. And the rumor is that he made somewhere, depending on whose math you believe, somewhere between 90 million and like 150 million on those two movies because he took a lower salary or lower cost to do the movie up front, but then took points on the back end. Well, Scarlett Johansson was counting on those points on the back end of the theater release in order to supplement the lower salary or the lower payout that she took up front. And apparently The Rock did the same thing. Now, The Rock is trying to play nice and is not saying that he's going to sue Disney. I'm sure they're trying to figure out something behind the scenes because you don't want effectively the biggest movie star in the country right now bad mouthing your movie franchise or your movie studio. And interestingly, I thought like, ooh, maybe this was just some contract negotiation by Disney. Maybe this was like Scarlett Johansson's agent wasn't thinking and didn't, foresee this issue as the movie was being recorded because who knows there was going to be COVID and simultaneous release on TV. So maybe they just got outmaneuvered by Disney. But it turns out in Scarlett Johansson's contract, I was reading the contract that was linked to in this Yahoo Finance article or some other website that we were looking at. They did specifically say movie only to be released in theaters, right? Because that's where her revenue was going to be coming from. So Disney couldn't pull a fast one and go direct to DVD or direct to Disney Plus or whatever the case may be. So interesting that and keep in mind, by the way, you guys know I'm a libertarian. I'm all about businesses being able to do whatever they want or pivot however they want or try new business strategies. I do think it's stupid. I do agree with the Movie Theaters Association of America that they could keep a captive audience for those people that kind of want early access to the movie in the theater, and then they can release it on Disney Plus. I just think that's a better business model, but I'm sure there's people infinitely smarter than me with a bunch of MBAs that decided that that's not the best Disney model that they want to pursue. And businesses can do that, but you also can't violate contracts and screw over your employees, even if they're highly paid $10 million movie employees. So it's interesting that I think this story is going to continue to evolve as Disney tries to find, and Paramount Pictures and Fox and everybody else tries to find different ways to release movies. I think a lot of kind of like we've seen legacy media be disrupted by Facebook, and there's all kinds of craziness on that. And now the New York Times is behind a paywall, and everybody's scrambling to try to find a way to make money or change their business model. Disney's always doing the same thing. They're always innovating. But I also think there's going to be a lot of this weird tension over the next couple of years between actors, the Screen Actors Guild, the Producers Guild, the Editors Guild, on how they're paid under the traditional model versus maybe this new model that we're seeing ourselves go to. And it reminds me, I used to work at the Washington Mutual Bank that was inside of Vaughn's grocery store that was like 5 blocks from Disney Studios in Burbank. So obviously Disneyland is down in Orange County, but the studios where everything gets made and all the executives are and basically all the people that make the Disney machine move is located in Burbank. And I used to work in the bank right down the street. So it was funny because I would simultaneously talk to a lot of Disney, I wouldn't call them executives, but middle management. These are people that were making 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 grand a year, something like that. Really great money to work in the entertainment industry. And I would see them. We would, this is back in the day when people would actually bring in a physical paycheck in the early 2000s to the bank. So they would bring in their paycheck or they'd have customer service issues. And we had extended hours at that grocery store branch. So I just knew a lot of people, did a lot of loans for people that worked at Disney. But then I would also see the people in the area who were subcontractors for Disney. So they were the graphic artist. They were the person that got the, temporary trash contract. They were the people that ran the air conditionings that kept all the celluloid film at a certain, price point or temperature, or not a certain price point, at a certain temperature so that that very important original film wouldn't be destroyed, right? So I knew the people from Disney, and I knew the people that were the subcontractors and the people that were kind of in the middle working for Disney. And sure enough, subcontractors would get a contract from Disney and they would be like, oh, this is awesome. I landed Disney. This is the mothership. This is the Titanic. I've made it. Their pay scale is great, whatnot. And sure enough, 6 months or 12 months later, they would be pissed because Disney is a giant corporation. It has a lot of bureaucrats. It has a lot of bureaucracy. And they are aggressive with their vendors in like, oh, hey, and by the way, this is what I've heard. This is what I've heard. I don't want our YouTube channel to get canceled for this. This is what I have heard firsthand from people that have worked with Disney, and I've seen their pay stubs and contracts and stuff while I was doing loans for them to kind of substantiate this. It's like a graphic artist would say like, oh man, I got this awesome $70,000 project with Disney. And then Disney would slow pay them, and then they would get their lawyers involved, and then they would say, well, thanks for the work, but we only feel like we're going to pay you $45,000, take it or fight the Death Star, which is Disney and all of our lawyers, and they would just have to take it, right? And so I think a lot of subcontractors, I think a lot of actors, I think they all get screwed by Disney, because at the end of the day, Disney is the mouse, they're the happiest place on earth, but they are a giant, giant, giant corporation who is beholden to their stockholders and are always trying to make more money, right? And so I hope Scarlett Johansson wins. I hope she gets her fair share of the revenue from Disney Plus. I hope she gets her residuals or her points in her back end, and we'll just see how this story develops, right? Because I think Disney is going to be in hot water with a lot of different aspects of how movies are made and the traditional pay structure based on what they're kind of experimenting with on Disney Plus. And at the end of the day, you heard it here first, I think their Disney Plus strategy is ridiculous. I think they should go exclusive release in the theater and then 2, 3, 4 weeks later, release on Disney Plus. I think what they're doing accidentally is they're catering to their more left-leaning audience, or the woke section of their audience, or the progressive side of their audience who still does not feel comfortable going out in public, or doesn't want to sit in the movie theater, which, by the way, if you have health concerns or you're not vaccinated, great, don't go to the movie theater. But I think they're playing to that audience, and they're forgetting that 50% of the country wants to go out to movies, right? So give them early access and then give everybody access 2 or 3 weeks later. I think that delayed strategy, I think it would actually make them more money, but who am I? I digress. Okay, next, the other day we talked about, and we'll link to his site in here as well. We talked about that lawsuit being dismissed from the U.S. women's soccer team, and they were suing, I can't remember if it was the World Cup organization or the Olympic organization or both, but basically they were claiming that women make less than men, and, Megan Rapinoe got to go talk about the White House about this, and then Biden, parroted her message, and it was all bullshit. The lawsuit got thrown out because it turned out that the women did not get paid less than men. They just got paid differently with benefits. And we'll relink to what I was talking about, because I wasn't really talking about that issue. Nate, the lawyer, who's on YouTube as well, had a great video breaking that down. So I'll just let him do that. Go watch his 15-minute video. What I was talking about more is like, I just really dislike the mass media, the traditional media, the CNNs, the Fox News, the MSNBC, because they choose to tell their narrative through the stories they choose to pick up, right? Now, any reporter in the country could have done some basic fact finding, read the lawsuit, interviewed a lawyer, and been like, oh no, this is all baseless. Like, the women's team does not make less than the men's team. But that doesn't fit the narrative for the left-leaning media, and the right-leaning media just dismisses it as like, no, you're stupid, you don't understand basic economics, and nobody's actually doing the reporting, right? No journalist is actually being a journalist, and it sure as hell is not making it to any of the, important news outlets. However, remember, 2 things can be true at the same time. 2 things can be true at the same time. I can be the type of person who dislikes Megan Rapinoe. We got to look at how to pronounce her name, because I feel bad. I don't know who she is. I'm sure she might be a lovely person, but I can disagree with her politics. I can disagree with her taking a knee during the national anthem and think that's kind of disgusting. I can disagree with the way she talks about the pay gap and inequality, because just a basic understanding of economics gets rid of that theory, and we can put that to bed. Women do not get paid 76 cents on the dollar, 73 cents on the dollar, 82 cents on the dollar for men. That's just not true when you actually adjust for all the stuff that's in that economic data that tends to lead to that ongoing confusion and misrepresentation of men's pay versus women's pay. You can hate all that stuff about her and about how that's infected the USA women's soccer team and how it's infected some other athletes in the Olympics and represent the United States. You can hate all of that. You can even be so cynical, as I tend to be, to think like, hey, you know what? These guys and gals that are protesting or want to give the Black Lives Matter sign or want to, tear up the flag or want to kneel during the national anthem, you can even be so cynical, as I am, to think like, hey, I don't even know if they believe this stuff, but they know it's a good PR move where if you just stand up there, you embrace your medal, you're rah-rah, you got an American flag, that's a 5-second media clip on NBC. But if you take a knee and you cause a big stir, that's a 5 to 15 minute like news clip, right? With the right outrage. Now everybody knows your name, and now you get invited to the White House, and now you get a, Victoria's Secret model contract. Where if you're just like, kind of if you're just standard quo, wait, what is the term I'm looking for? If you're just
Status quo.
Jesus, I can't talk today, man. I'm already thinking about going to the gym. If you're just status quo and you're standing up there and you're happy to win your medal, that doesn't get a lot of press. But if you're making a scene, that gets a lot of press. So if you're cynical like me, you might even believe that these people don't even believe in what they're talking about. It's just a way to further their career, get more press, get more social media, get more contracts for money. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's not. However, two things can be true at the same time. You can think all of that about these people, and you can still root for America, right? And this is coming from the left, this is coming from the right, sorry. This is coming from the right, this is coming from the Trumps of the world, this is coming from the Ben Shapiros of the world, this is coming from all the people that somehow their dad served in the military, and so now they're personally offended by somebody taking a knee. It's like, it's a lot of virtue signaling from the right. A lot of times we accuse the left of virtue signaling. This is virtue signaling from the right, because look, two things can be true at the same time. Boom. You can hate all the things about the things that they're doing politically, and you can still root for America to win, right? Like, I don't want the U.S. soccer team to go out on the pitch and lose. By the way, that's field for us Americans. Pitch if you're in Europe. I learned this from somebody who's a big soccer fan, because I'm not a big soccer fan. And you can still root for them to beat, South Korea and China and Australia and all of these teams. You can still root for American excellence, even if the individuals playing on the team, you disagree with their politics. Because here's the danger. As we fall into this more and more angry tribal conversation, the left becomes more like the things that they say they hate about the right, and the right becomes more about the things that they say about the left that they hate. And so if you're completely judging an entity based on one person's political views, then, you're not really thinking it through. Now, if you really hate it, if you feel like this deep-seated belief that, like, because I disagree so strongly with this person's political views, and because I can't stand what they're doing, and I think they're treading on USA taxpayer dollars, which I don't even know if taxpayers pay for the Olympic training. I'm guessing we do. But I can understand the argument of, like, hey, they're supposed to be there to represent America. I don't like the way they're doing it. Well, then turn it off. Turn it off. Don't comment on it. Don't circulate their name. Don't give them the light of day. And like every other news story, they'll die in 5 minutes. I actually think in a lot of ways, the right has elevated the status of these people by going after the woke warriors and, like, constantly speaking out about it. No one would even know these people's names if you don't give them the light of day and you just say, hey, I disagree with what they're doing. I'm not going to comment on them. I'm not going to repost stories about them. I'm not going to talk well about them, but I'm not going to talk shit about them. Let's just move on. And we can move on to amazing videos like what we saw from Tamyra Stock. Now, Tamyra Stock, I hold a special place in my heart because of a couple reasons. One, I used to wrestle in high school. Wasn't particularly good at it, but really enjoyed the sport, and that's kind of carried me into jiu-jitsu the last couple of years, which I really enjoy. So I love watching Olympic wrestling. Two, I met my wife at a charity event for wrestlers. So there's this great program. I think they're nationwide, but they're most known in Los Angeles and New York. They're called Beat the Streets. Beat the Streets provides wrestling programs for inner city elementary and junior highs that have lost their funding for athletics. So they'll go into underserved areas, which are usually, either challenging socioeconomic areas, frequently places of people of color, brown, black, whatever the case may be. And they go into these schools and they start wrestling programs, and they try to teach, good physical fitness and good health habits and team camaraderie and a sport that they can then maybe play in high school and maybe even get to the college level. So it's a really great program. I've donated money to them for a long time. And I went to a charity event where Tamyra and several other female USA Olympics and male Olympic athletes were at. And that's where I met my wife. So I have a really huge soft spot in my heart for USA wrestling and for the sport. And it's super cool because Tamyra Stock is actually the first African-American black female from America to win a medal, definitely to win a gold. She's awesome. And it's impossible to find anybody who hates her after victory interview. So we're just going to watch a few seconds of it because it really reminds you why it feels special to be an American. And it really reminds you the spirit of the Olympics. So I'm just going to play it real quick. So anyway, my point is there's this theory called appreciative inquiry, and it's usually I don't know what I put over there. There we go. Okay, good. There's this theory called appreciative inquiry, which basically means we can talk about problems endlessly, right? We can talk about problems endlessly. And appreciative inquiry was started by this guy, David Cooper Ryder. You know, he went into a hospital to write, I can't remember his master's or his PhD thesis. And he's like, dude, it's a hospital. People die here. We can find endless problems. What if we just focused on what's going right? And he created this whole industry and this coaching methodology and this kind of like business development methodology called appreciative inquiry. And so what I would love, and I'm guilty of this as well, right? I love talking about the negative stuff. And the negative stuff goes viral, and the negative stuff gives you that dopamine hit because people comment and they like and they get in fights and you feel like you did something. But appreciative inquiry would say like, hey, if you dislike the Megan, USA soccer, equal pay, yada, if you dislike all of that stuff, well, find something that's counter to that you can appreciate, right? Because if you appreciate about things and you find things that you enjoy and then you elevate that, you kind of just have a better human experience. So what I would say for any of you that can't square that, you know, round peg in that square hole and say, yeah, I really dislike some of the things that the USA soccer team is doing, but I can also root for them because it's the USA. If you can't square that, then turn it off, don't comment it, and comment and find amazing examples you can appreciate, like this young lady it's super cool. And I'm hoping she's going to be at the next Beat the Streets gala and I can meet her there because that would be great. All right. If you've got kids listening to this for some reason, please turn it off because it's going to get a little not safe for work. And we'll start out with our not safe for work by the New York assistant attorney general. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was the actual attorney general or if it was one of the assistants, but the New York attorney general had this to say about Governor Cuomo the other day.
Than 74,000 pieces of evidence, including documents, emails, texts, audio files, and pictures. These interviews and pieces of evidence reveal a deeply disturbing yet clear picture. Governor Cuomo sexually harassed current and former state employees in violation of both federal and state laws.
So not good for Governor Cuomo. You know, remember, it was only, and Chris, maybe we can find this clip to interject it here. It was only 6-8 months ago that all the Hollywood elite were lining up to talk about how Governor Cuomo was amazing. And I think they gave him an Emmy or something for like his daily updates on COVID. And they were really lionizing Governor Cuomo as this amazing governor who had dealt with the pandemic in such an amazing way. And it turns out, A, they were wrong because he kind of ignored the science and sent a bunch of elderly people back to senior care centers who were COVID positive, who then infected a bunch of other people who then sadly passed away. I mean, if you look at the number of elderly people who died in the state of New York compared to other states, some of that, in fairness, is because like everybody's packed in there like sardines. So COVID probably travels and is much more communicable there. I will give him that. But Governor Cuomo made a lot of missteps during COVID, and I don't feel like he has been appropriately criticized in the media for that. Now, what's interesting is, will these sexual allegations, where even President Biden chimed in and said, well, yeah, he should step down, he should resign based on these sexual allegations. Everybody's kind of weighing in on this. Governor Cuomo has refused to step down. He's saying that all 14 of these women who accused him and the attorney general reviewed their text messages, photos, video messages, you know, transcripts of voicemails and stuff, and agrees that he sexually harassed them, but whatever. He's saying, no, I'm going to fight it. I'm not going to step down. Now, we've seen this play out before, right? Where, let's just use a different example. Republican, it gets found out that 30 years ago he wore blackface or a ethnically insensitive costume, and he's done. His career is over. But, you know, a Democratic governor, who was the governor that they found was wearing blackface, but he was a Democrat, so he came out and he apologized, and, you know, he did all the right things, and he asked the mea culpa, and he's still in office, and I don't think that would happen if he was a conservative. But we've seen this before where sometimes there's a little bit of a double standard, right? And, going back to the Supreme Court hearings, I personally think that, had Trump not stood up so dramatically for Kavanaugh, I think the allegations of one person from when he was in high school, I think that would have been enough to derail his appointment to the Supreme Court. But I think Trump standing up for him caused that to happen, whether you agree or disagree. I think that's the only reason that Kavanaugh is a Supreme Court justice. Now, here is why, and maybe you're hearing it first, here is why Governor Cuomo will not be governor within the next couple of months, and the Democrats will pile on to him, make sure he resigns, make sure that he is vilified and villainized. I'm gonna have to look that up. I always misuse one of those words. One of those words doesn't exist, and one of those words is correct. I don't know if it's vilify or villainize. I think it's vilified. So they will vilify him. They will use this as proof that they will even excommunicate one of their own, in a Me Too type movement. However, if you think back to the credible claims of sexual harassment against Clinton, and actually the credible claims of sexual harassment against Biden during this most recent presidential campaign, the reason it's different, right? Biden's our president, Clinton was our president. There's been sexual allegations against both of them, is because Cuomo's not really in a position of policy making, or he's not really part of the power structure. Yes, he's a governor of a giant state, maybe the most or one of the most important states in the union. Yes, he was, like I said, lionized as this amazing leader of the Democratic Party less than a few months ago on the Emmys and the Oscars, and how he dealt with COVID, even though I would disagree that that was a true statement. But at the end of the day, he's not important for national policy. He doesn't actually have a vote in the legislature of New York on how they deal with things. He's not part of the inner circle of the power structure. He's definitely not running for president now. And because of that, Democrats will definitely throw him out with yesterday's trash. And they'll use this as a chest pounding moment of like, see, Me Too. We understand that all women's allegations should be taken seriously. And if somebody accuses you of something involving sexual harassment, you should step down. You should lose your job. You should lose your career. Now, call me crazy, I think that anybody should have the right to go through a legal proceeding and go through a court hearing before they lose their job. I think that should have been true for I think that should be true for the Clintons, and I think that should be true for Biden. If there's, allegations out there that can turn into a legal complaint, I think that should be true for Cuomo. I think the way that the Supreme Court hearing was handled with Kavanaugh, where they brought in the accuser, she testified. They brought in the accused, he testified. I think that's great. I'm all about, if somebody sexually harasses women, they should pay the piper, they should lose their job, they should go to jail. And I also think we should not be in this habit of, there's an allegation made, so now you are canceled, fired, you're a pariah or a leper, and you can no longer be seen in the public eye. But I do think the Democrats, because Cuomo is not part of the power structure, he's not a part of the lawmaking process, I think they will throw him under the bus, and they will pile on and say, hey, before trial, you need to resign. We need to show this show of force that we support the Me Too movement. But they absolutely would not do that when there were credible allegations against Biden or against Clinton, because obviously one of the most important people in the power structure dynamic in the country. So I think this time it will be different, and I don't think Cuomo will be governor in 90 days. We'll see. These links really don't really mean anything. It's just, it is just kind of funny how things have changed, right? It wasn't that long ago. I remember in the 90s that Bill Clinton was accused from multiple women. And there were reporters like, what was her name? I just looked it up here. I could not remember. I originally thought it was Gloria Steinem, but it wasn't. It was this reporter, Michelle Goldberg. No, I can't even find it now. There was this reporter that famously said, hey, because of how Bill Clinton has protected women reproductive rights and so on, like I and every other woman in the country should be willing to get down on our knees and give him a blowjob. And it's like, that was in the 90s. The thought of hearing that today, it's probably pretty good that that's changed. But it's amazing how the attitude and the kids' gloves in which these sexual assault charges were handled back in the Bill Clinton era would now cause you to not even be able to be seen in the public eye. Probably before trial, you definitely wouldn't be able to run for president, although I do believe everybody is owed a trial. So, interesting how things have changed. Weird that we went from Disney to sexual allegations and blowjobs. Sorry about that, but that's kind of what you can expect from the On the Edge podcast. Hopefully you didn't let your kids listen to this section, but it'll be interesting to see what happens, going forward with Disney, going forward with Cuomo. And I would just recommend, if there's something that's pissing you off in the public kind of zeitgeist in pop culture with somebody on the Olympics teams that's doing something that you don't want to do, just go find somebody else to root for, right? And remember, this is important. This is why it's really hard to just be a Democrat or just be a Republican or just be a libertarian. Two things can be true at the same time, right? You can disagree with somebody's politics and still root for them because they're on Team USA, right? I can have a strong opinion about people being vaccinated or not vaccinated and still go to a party with both people that are vaccinated and not vaccinated, have a great time and be friends with them. So remember, everything's not binary. Everything doesn't have to be super tribal. Everything doesn't have to be us versus them. Two things can be true at the same time. And that's the parting thought I'm going to leave you with. Love you guys. As you guys know, if you stuck around this long, please subscribe, like the like button, like the like button. You know all the things you're supposed to do to help us out. That way I just know that I'm not talking to myself. Love you guys, and we'll talk soon.